Good evening and welcome to the Hartford School Board School Directors Meeting. It's September the 17th, 2025. I call the meeting to order at 6:02. Do we have any changes, additions for the agenda? Seeing none, do I?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sorry.
Can we do a initial discussion about the negotiations timing and framework? Should only take a couple of minutes. We could probably do it under the governance.
Under what, Kevin?
Under the governance process section.
Okay, sure.
Motion to amend agenda to discuss negotiations as part of section 2.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so will be it. We'll go to governance policies, except section 4, policy GP2. So you want to go ahead and start right now, Kevin, with the negotiations part?
Coach?
Jacob, could you give us a quick update on, our prospective timeline as far as getting started and calling our first meetings together, and then the formulation of the budget and the need for a prospective number? And I'd be happy to fill in as I can.
Sure. So per the contract, we're supposed to have our first meeting no later than October 15th. So I think, Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we kind of have our committees
Right, we do.
settled. So I think we'll be scheduling some time to meet with the committees to do some prep work for the negotiations. Because, I mean, depending on when the board wants to see that kind of first 40,000 foot draft view of the budget, I'll need some input from y'all as far as what you want to start to budget, so I can crunch those numbers and give you that, rough first draft.
And see, during a budget year, when there's a new contract, it's important for us to be able to give our chief financial officer and his team a number to start the budget process with. That's not set in stone, but it gives them a jumping off point for creation of that 40,000 foot view of the budget. So for example, if we determine that we'd like to start with, for example, let's say a 3 or a 3.5% increase over our last active contract, then at least there's a number placed in that first 40,000 foot view of the budget. Now, during negotiations, coming back to the board, we might determine that number might change, but at least Jacob and his team will have a number to jump off from. And the superintendent, I'm sorry. If that's helpful.
Do you have anything else to add, Jacob?
No.
Okay, does anyone have any questions on this? You all ready for it? Of course we are. Of course we're ready. Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Jacob. I'm going to call on Jonathan Garthwaite to give us the latest testing and implications.
Good evening. So a couple of one quick update on PCBs and one that I will pass off to you. When last we spoke, we were soliciting proposals for the development of the ECA document, which is the corrective action alternatives. We received a number of proposals and are reviewing those. And hopefully within the next week or so, Jacob and I will meet with those parties and come to a conclusion on who's going to do that work for us, and we'll proceed. So that's a step in the right direction that I like because it's an action item and I can actually start doing stuff. So that's a quick positive. It took a while to get there, but we do have a plan in place. That document, when we meet with the consultants, we'll make it clear that the board's direction is to address the existence of these contaminants in the buildings, and they've expressed the desire to get rid of those contaminants. That evaluation document will examine that option as well as any other intermediate steps that might be considered. When that document is created, you all will have a decision point about how we proceed. So that's the ECA update. Any questions on that? That's fairly straightforward. Moving to air sampling and testing. As a little bit of background, there's been obviously a lot of confusion and a lot of conversation about what is best guess, what is science, what is all of that. And in conversation with the chair last week, she had asked me to put together just kind of some bullet points of what is objective and what is subjective and how the decision tree has grown. So I'm just gonna read through that as a preface to the conversation. The grouping of rooms sampled is based on the assessment of the environmental consultants. That assessment is based on the observation on site that the materials in the group spaces are of the same age and type. While the actual groupings are subjective, the presence of identical materials within each grouping is objective. The analytical method of testing 30% of each grouping is based on the objective identification of materials. So the groupings are based on all the rooms being the same. The 30% is an assumption that will represent the conditions in all the rooms. Bulk and substrate sampling has identified the presence of PCBs in those spaces and those materials. Those materials are the source of the airborne PCB contamination, regardless of concentration identified by a specific air sample or test period. Air sample results are indicative only of airborne contamination. They do not provide objective information related to the type or toxicity of source contamination materials. The air samples taken during higher ambient temperatures objectively identify a higher concentration of airborne contamination than those taken during cooler ambient temperatures. There's an established correlation between ambient air temperature and the release of airborne contamination from those source materials. That correlation allows conjecture that release of airborne contamination from source materials will continue to be based on ambient temperatures. That basically, as temperatures go up and down, so too will the readings. The air samples taken in June showed immediate action level exceedances at that time in some of the rooms in some groupings. Therefore, the spaces in those groups was deemed unsafe by the DOH and DEC, the Health and Environmental Conservation, deemed unsafe to occupy at that time. The subsequent air samples in those spaces did not show IAL exceedances at that time in those spaces. Based on that data, the DOC and DC may provide recommendations that those spaces may not be occupied at that time. It's the discretion of the DOC and DC to adjust their recommendations. We are required to perform quarterly air sampling as long as PCB source materials are present in the building. It is likely that air contamination concentrations will continue to follow the temperature correlation trend, i.e. higher concentrations when space is warm, lower concentrations space is cool. The immediate hazard associated with an IAL exceedance can be managed in the short term by intermittent occupancy or interim mitigation methods. Long-term risk associated with the presence of PCB contamination can be addressed by elimination of the materials, remediation, abatement activities. There is no definitive data on long-term low-level exposure. That's what they told us in the last meeting. So that's kind of like the stuff that is objective and the stuff that is subjective. We know what we know, and the interpretation is to the state. moving on from that, just a quick reminder, when they talk about the SAL or the IAL, that's the action level, the school action level, immediate action level. The school action level is 100, the immediate action level is 300, just for reference. We received the results of the latest tests, and I'm just going to read this verbatim slowly and ask questions after. Results indicate PCBs were lower compared to the June 2025 sampling event in all 5 spaces sampled during both, which is consistent with lower temperatures and relative humidities observed during the September event. The results in the 5 sampled during both were, and I won't read all of them, but as an example, room 228 was previously 160, and it went down to 58. 213 was 130, it went down to 80. 206 was 66, it went down to 50. 205 was 300, which is an immediate action level, it went down to 87. 214 was 310, which is an immediate action level, it went down to 84. Keep in mind, 100 is the school action level. Several previously untested spaces exceeded the school action level, meaning they were over 100. 201, 203, 211, and one was within 25% of the school action level, which means they require some abatement. So that information tracks. It follows the trend. We had higher concentrations in the air when it's warmer, higher relative humidity, and lower concentrations in the air when it was cooler with lower relative humidity. And that, I think that supports the graph they showed us in the last meeting. And I think it's safe to say, I did have a conversation with Cassandra Kimmy today about this meeting to kind of make sure that I was interpreting this right. And I think it is safe to say that we can expect that trend to continue. We will get higher readings when it's warmer and lower readings when it's cooler. And that's as objective as I can give you. And remembering that those air samples are just that. They're not indicative of actual contaminant materials. Different materials outgas at different rates under different circumstances. And then we were waiting on interpretation from the state. And just this evening, a couple hours ago, received an email from Cassandra Kimmy, who is the Senior Environmental Program Manager that we've been working with. And greeting. I'll just read you the definitive paragraph. Health and DEC have reviewed the most recent indoor air sampling results that were recently collected at Hartford High School and ACTC. Based on incorporation of the new data indicating a reduction in indoor air concentrations of PCBs, Health and DEC support reoccupation of the spaces in groups 15 and 16. A formal letter with details on the updated occupancy options from Health and DEC is forthcoming. So my interpretation, and you got this as well, is that both of those agencies support occupancy of the space based on the most recent readings. Their formal letter will describe whatever conditions may be associated with that, whatever options there are for that. And that's as much information as we have today. So we have kind of the objective, subjective piece of this. We have the data as presented by Wade Heindel, showing that we did in fact have lower readings when it was cooler. We have the trend data, and we have the state agencies saying they, based on the most recent data, they would support occupancy, and soon, I would hope, we will get a formal letter explaining what conditions or options they will support related to occupancy. So I think that, the decision tonight for the board is do we, when do we, how do we use those spaces?
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Oh, go ahead. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Kevin.
Jonathan, how much control through our automated systems do we have on keeping the temperature within those spaces at a, let's say, functional enough level where it could at least be in that lower range?
So I will answer that shortly, but first I asked Cassandra Kimmy when I spoke with her today if there was a definitive temperature at which we could say that trend kicks in. Like,
Okay.
is it 78 or 84? And frankly, there's just not, that temperature nobody knows what it is.
Okay.
We know there's a correlation between temperature, relative humidity, and airborne concentration, but it's a correlation.
Okay. No, I understand the science.
So I say that, and to answer your question, we have, since this thing first hit, I have been running the ventilation systems, such as they are in that high school, as hard as we can. I can't do any more.
Right.
As far as maintaining temperatures, we have a 60-year-old number 2 boiler and a 30-something-year-old green wood chip boiler, and we provide heat and comfort heating for the building. It is not as consistent as I would like, and we get more cold calls than we do overheating calls. Is that safe to say? I think. I get more cold. Than overheating calls. But the answer to your question is I can't tell you in good faith that if I had a number that we could not exceed or should not exceed, that I could tell you we have the equipment in place to nail that every day. I mean, I think we could, but I just crossed over to subjective.
Okay. No, I just needed to get that out there for folks that might have that question in their mind.
I mean, if I can, just a quick follow-up. One of the remediation methods that is often discussed is increased ventilation. And as a quick follow-up on that, our existing ventilation system is running as hard as it can with what we have. If we were to make the decision at some point in the future to increase the air exchange per hour in any of those spaces, we don't have the heating capacity to keep up.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Jonathan, in the winter, when we're heating those spaces and we have all the windows closed, I guess before I even ask this question, when's the next quarterly testing required?
That is an excellent question. We are overdue. We were given a pass on the quarterly while the state proceeded with this most recent round of testing. I asked today when we could proceed because, my interest is to get us back on track. And frankly, we have to do quarterly sampling and testing, monitoring every quarter as long as we have these materials in the building. So what I would like to do, like any other preventive maintenance program, is just put it in ink now for every quarter until we're done with this. When I asked the question today about when we could do it, the answer was probably late October at the earliest. And when I said, is there any reason we couldn't do it next week? A shorter interval was preferable to me because it decreases the number of variable days between data sets. And the response was we have to wait until the DEC and health has completely reviewed this data and provided their formal recommendation, and then they will make a decision on whether the next round of sampling goes back to the 30% sampling of our originally quarterly program, or whether it, moving forward, includes these additional spaces we just sampled.
Okay.
So I would like very much to sample as quickly as possible and then dial it in every 3 months until we're done. So it's just like a metronome so that we can say to people, this is when we test and this is what we know, and we're going to tell you as soon as we know. But we have to wait for the state to tell us how to do that.
Okay. So all right. So we don't know when we can test
other
it.
than late October, I think is what she said today at the earliest.
Okay. All right. So that helps. My first question I was going to ask before asking that is, so we test in October, and then 3 months from then we test in the middle of winter when we're heating those spaces and all the windows are closed and the ventilation's going as hard as it can. Are we going to be right back potentially to not being able to use those spaces because ventilation's not going to be as good as it is now?
I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly, if you want me to engage in the same conjecture, I will say, if you look at trend data, you look at trends, and as the data tracks on that trend they shared with us, it's when we have higher humidity and higher ambient temperatures. Now, we don't have air conditioning in the building, so in the summer it's always hotter in those rooms than it is in the hottest days of the winter. As I said previously, I don't know where the switch is in temperature. I don't know if it's 78 or 80. Nobody knows. So I would conjecture, and this is a huge, my big get out of jail free card, that based on the graph that the state supplied, if ambient temperatures and humidity are lower in the environment, we should get lower readings in the rooms. That is what the trend suggests. But they will also say that every school has behaved differently, every space behaves differently. Whether that's a 30-point swing or a 3-point swing, I don't know. I truly wish I did. But I think what we will see as we go through this quarterly sampling is exactly what that trend graph that the state shared with us in the last meeting suggested, which is in the warmer months, we'll get higher readings and we will probably get exceedances. And in the colder months, we will get lower readings and we might not get exceedances. What I can't tell you definitively is what those readings will be on any of those dates, nor can I tell you what those readings will be between those points in time at which we take samples. That trend is connecting the dots, right?
Right.
All the space between the dots is conjecture.
Did they
Yep.
monitor?
No, understood.
Did they monitor air temperature or room temperature at the same time?
Yes.
They're collecting data.
Yes, they do. That's how they have that trend data. They
Okay.
monitor,
But
Relative-
are they doing it in our school?
not today, only when they do sampling.
Okay, right.
And in previous conversation about why quarterly, why 30%, I'm not a scientist. And as I understand it, as it has been explained to me by the very smart people who do the science, is the reason for quarterly sampling and 30% of the set sample is that they believe that gives them an accurate trend. And that's all I know about the reasoning behind that. But yes, their report
Includes the ambient temperature.
includes relative humidity, ambient temperature. They also take a baseline sample right out in front of the building. So it's like I have no reason, again, not a scientist, but having kind of looked over their shoulder for the last 2 years, I have no reason to doubt the sampling and testing process or the work of the labs involved. It all makes sense. And the fact that our data tracks the correlated trend suggests that the efficacy of that testing, right? The question, and people are tired of hearing me say this, but I think a lot about the difference between a hazard and a risk. And I've said over and over and over again, if there's a hazard in a building, I'm not even going to call Caty. I'm not going to let anybody in. And I think any of you would support that. If I learned on any day that there was a hazard, we would not let people in the building. What we're talking about now is mitigating a risk. And that's what you all need to do. I can give you whatever information I can give you how to make that decision. But we're not in a situation, if we had an immediate action level today, we'd have a hazard, right? What we're talking about is how you mitigate the risk and how over the long term, what that risk mitigation does to the programs in the school, to the use of the school, to the population, to the expectations of the community, all that stuff that's on your desk, not mine. It's a tricky one. Sometimes it's easy. Earlier today, I used the example of when we have an authority that will give us definitive judgment, it's an easy decision. And the example I used was the theater. We have for 60 years had 390 seats in there, 380 something seats in there. The fire marshal recently decided because of conditions in the space, we can only have 240. The risk has been mitigated. We can put 240 people in that room safely if we do these things. Thank you. Check. Done. The state has not provided us that clarity here, which is why it's up to you all.
That's reasonable.
Any further questions, either from Garrett, from Kevin, or from anyone on the board?
Thanks, Jonathan. That's reasonable under, the given circumstances. So
Yeah. I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Jonathan.
thank you.
Jeremy?
Questions?
Yes, Walker, go ahead.
I just like to say that all of the admin team and the principal of the high school, Mr. Fogg, and all the teachers have done such an amazing job with navigating all of the room closures. And it's been so smooth from a student perspective. It's just amazing and so nice to see.
Thank you. Thanks very much. It's nice to hear. Absolutely, go ahead. Thanks, Walker.
So just a couple of things that I did pay Walker to say that, by the way. I want to make sure that's really clear. What I understand from what Jonathan just shared is that the state is being consistent with what they've said from the beginning. We have had rooms in the building that have exceeded the school action level, more than 100 or more, and less than 300. And we have been able to occupy them. It makes sense to me that if that's where we are, we could reoccupy those rooms. I think what I heard Jonathan quote was essentially reoccupy the spaces. I'm not sure that there was any indication that there are going to be contingencies or conditions for that occupation, any more so than what they've already outlined for us, which they've done from the very beginning. And we've followed those as we followed the rest of their recommendations. Just so the board knows and the community knows, these are kind of the impacts that this has had on our school. In terms of student impacts, there are a number of advisories that are sharing spaces, which is not ideal for what we do in advisory. There are also a number of advisories that are in inadequate spaces, far too small to even sit in a circle, which is how we would prefer our advisories to sit. We have 10 classes that are occurring in rooms that are outside our content area, which probably doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you're in a math class and you look up and you don't see anything that looks mathy, it becomes a bit of a big deal. Our library is currently being used as our ILC, which means that our library is not functioning as a library should. And probably, truth be told, despite the fact that they're doing a phenomenal job, the ILC programming isn't functioning as it should either. There's a loss of instructional time as our staff moves from room to room. We have a 3-minute passing time. Often our staff are getting to their rooms just as or after our students are, which doesn't allow them to be at the door greeting them, which is what we would ask. Our teachers are telling us that they've struggled to build classroom community as they've moved from space to space. And I before coming to this meeting, I counted 21 teachers are directly impacted in that they are currently teaching in multiple rooms, which means that they're moving about. Supplies are often in the wrong room. We've purchased materials to support that, but we haven't solved the problem. And as Walker indicated, our 3 administrators are working out of one office and finding spaces to work with families or outside providers on an as-needed basis, which we don't have any problem doing. All that to say, it's my hope that the board tonight will direct me to reoccupy the spaces as in support of the information that we received tonight from the state agencies. If I get that direction, our administrative team will work on that tomorrow, and we will share that information with our staff, and hopefully in no more than a week, we will be able to make the adjustments that need to be made in order to ensure that the things that I just talked about are mitigated.
Thank you, Nelson. Does anyone have any questions of Nelson?
I have a question. Have you taken any concerns from any staff about moving back into those spaces that were previously we couldn't occupy and now all of a sudden we can? Because we haven't received any complaints or concerns from any staff from the board. Have you received any of those complaints before we're making decisions on behalf of the staff who?
No, I think the reality is from our staff's perspective, 10 of the 12 rooms that we're not using were never tested. They don't perceive that those rooms are unsafe because those rooms have never been deemed unsafe. It's interesting that two of the rooms that tested above the immediate action level, 300 and 314, I believe, were the two numbers originally, are now testing below the school action level. If we are using the science that we've been asked to use, and if we are following the state's guidance, which we've said we're going to do, those rooms don't appear to be a danger, and our staff has not suggested that they in any way are concerned about moving back into them. I would suggest quite the opposite. They're hopeful that tonight, we are doing what we're doing. Understanding that there's a chance, certainly if we do a June testing again, and there is a correlation between the humidity and the heat, that we could be looking at doing this again, going into next year potentially, if we haven't done, if we haven't been able to do the things that we need to do to remediate the PCBs that are in the building. I think that's going to be the way we live for a period of time. But those classroom spaces, which have been tested, to somebody's question, maybe it was Garrett's, the classroom spaces have been tested throughout the year. And it wasn't until the June testing that they were at a level that we had to vacate them. So we have within our building, not just anecdotal data from other data sets from other places, we have within our building evidence that our building doesn't test at the immediate action level until such time that the ambient temperatures and the humidity are raised.
Do you have anything?
Thank you.
Okay, does the board feel that we have enough information that we want to move the motion tonight?
I would say yes. And thank you, Nelson and Jonathan and Walker for your comments and updates. And Cathy, that was a very directed question. So I appreciate that as well, as far as us being able to make a decision tonight so that we can help move our educational process at the high school.
Do I hear a motion?
I move that we reoccupy the previously closed spaces and rooms in the high school, given the new data set that we've had, as well as the support from the state to reoccupy those spaces.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion passes. Got it.
Thank you all.
I just want the public to know that this has been a very long, drawn-out process, and it's the board has spent many hours, has our principals and Jonathan on trying to get all of this information together and digest it and ask all the right questions or even the wrong questions and try to figure out what's best for our students and for our staff. So we know it's been a long venture for all of you out there too. And hopefully it will be coming to an end soon so that we don't have to go through this again next June. That's my hope. Okay, thank you very much. VSBA resolutions work. As most of you know, VSBA is the Vermont State School Board Association. They have a lot of information that they share with us and trainings that they do for us. One of the things that they have to do is set up resolutions every year. And to do that, a couple of things happen. There are board members that serve on the VSBA board, and there is a resolutions committee, and there's about anywhere from 5 to 8 or 9 of us on that committee at any one time. different school boards throughout the state want to put forth resolutions. So they have meetings of their members. They talk about what the problem is that they would like to solve or change, and then they write up a resolution. There's a specific way to do that. Then they send it into the VSBA, and once a year, the resolutions committee gets together. They read through all of the resolutions that have been sent in by all the other boards that want to send in resolutions. And they talk about them, they discuss them, they take them apart, they put them back together and make sure that those resolutions are the ones that we want to keep. These resolutions direct VSBA on how they're going to conduct business and also for their bylaws. Every year at the annual conference, which is in Burlington this coming year, this coming year, and I hope all of our board members will be able to attend it. We've narrowed it down to one day because it was hard for a lot of people to take off 2 days in a row during the week to take off work and go to the conference. So we've narrowed it down last year to just one day, and we've got it down to one day again. The day before the conference, the boards, chairs, and the superintendents get together and have some additional training that is required by statute that we have to have. Then we have a business meeting, and well, let me back up just a minute. I forgot that important step. So every year each board nominates someone from their board to be what is called the voting delegate. During the business meeting, the resolutions will be read, and it is voted on there, and they can decide if it's going to pass, if it's not going to pass, or it's just going to stay the same. So we tonight need to vote on, first of all, on a voting delegate to be at the conference. We've got lots of information to share with the ones that the person that is going to be going. You'll have all the resolutions in your hand to study and talk about, and you can ask questions of anyone from VSBA or from myself and for Caty. And we'll throw Aaron out there on the cornfield too. So you'll have a number of people that you can ask questions of about the resolution, why it's worded the way it is, and why we, as our board, as we discuss them, why we think that we agree with the VSBA Resolutions Committee or we disagree with it. During the business meeting at the conference, our voting delegate will be in with the rest of the voting delegates, and anyone can go into that meeting, but only the people that have been voted as voting delegates will be allowed to vote. So one of the things that I would like for us to do tonight is to nominate someone, because the SBA needs to have a name fairly quickly. And as you are registering for that conference, one of the questions that's on the registration form is, are you the voting delegate for your board? That's basically it. So do I have any nominations that or even if you volunteer, you want to do it? Kevin and I have done it for a number of years, and that doesn't mean that it has to be Kevin or myself to do it. You just need to be able to understand completely, and probably much better than I explained it, the procedure and what the resolutions mean for us as a school board too, because we will be part of that.
Even though
End
we didn't
result.
put any resolutions
I'm
forward,
sorry?
even though we didn't put any resolutions
Even,
forward.
yes, not all school boards put in resolutions. Yeah. And you can see where they're
from, which
where the
district.
resolutions come from, yeah, like in your board packet, you have the complete report from this year's committee, and then you have what all of the resolutions are. The board and at the bottom, it'll say the board recommended passes a regular resolution, or it's not a different wording online.
Take no action.
Take no action, yeah. So again, it's not something really difficult, but you have to do it, and it has to be done in person. You can't, this is one of the things you cannot do online at the conference. So do I have any nominations or any volunteers? We'll take either one.
I would have to check the 10/29, 10/30 date. That's pretty tough if it's during the day,
The 30th is gonna be the day
It's a
that
single
you
day.
have to be here.
The 30th.
which is a Thursday.
Yeah.
Not a volunteer at this time.
That's fine, you do not have to do it, trust me. It's,
I just need to look at the work schedule. Not a volunteer at
That's
this
fine.
time.
that's fine. You don't have to.
Do you want us to nominate you?
Yeah.
I didn't hear you volunteer, so I'm gonna.
Oh, no,
So Nancy,
yes,
being that the dates have changed, we've moved to the one-day format,
right,
and folks are still trying to lock in their work schedules and what have you. You are our representative for the VSBA regional, and also sit, on those policy committees.
that's a true.
If you would be so inclined, I would be happy to nominate you, since you're going to be there anyways.
That's fine, I will be more than happy to do it.
If the rest of the board concurs.
If I'm free, I'll go with you maybe. I just can't vote.
Yeah.
Well, oh, yeah, that's true.
Two of us
Which-
go, we don't have a quorum if it's
Yeah.
two. So.
Well, see, what's interesting is it's always fascinating, no matter if you're a voting member or not, just because watching that come together amongst the representative membership that actually numbers, well, it comprises the whole state and every one of our colleagues across the state. So sometimes there's some pretty lively discussions that we hear, and you get a chance to learn a lot about what's going on in the rest of the state. So I'll just throw that out from past experiences.
Thanks, Cathy. All right, does somebody want to make that a motion? Does Kevin make that a motion?
Yes.
Oh, okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. And I will abstain. Okay, super, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's not a problem.
Nancy, just a
Yes,
quick
sir.
question about the resolutions. Is there one for the decoupling?
I
No,
don't
it
think
wasn't
so,
on
Kevin.
in our,
No.
no.
Okay, I was just, curious if that had made the cut.
No, it didn't. Yeah, it's, and you understand, look, I'll explain just a little bit further, because not every resolution that comes into the resolution committee makes it.
Is accepted.
Yeah. And sometimes we send it back and just say, we really need some more clarification here. This is not real clear. And there's a deadline for them to be able to get this stuff to us so that we can have meetings and make sure that we get all this done in time for the yearly conference. Is there any other questions on the resolutions?
Thank you.
Yes, sir?
No, I just said thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. So, yes, sir.
Can you take a couple of comments on
Issue.
Sure. Why not? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. They're gonna yell at us if they don't hear you.
I think you folks have probably heard me refer to my service on a Wisconsin school board and as a director of the State School Boards Association in Wisconsin for a number of years in a previous life. we had relatively the same process that's employed here. And my board, I became very involved in that process. But until I did, my board did not elect or select a person to work as a representative of the board. It was just somebody who attended the annual meeting, the conference in Wisconsin, would act as an individual on behalf of our school board. We formalized that so that there was a person designated to represent the school board. But if I've missed a meeting or two this summer, so maybe I've missed it, but I didn't hear any discussion at this board table about proposing any resolutions. And just now, I didn't hear any discussion about what position you would take on the resolutions that are going to be considered. I think both those things are a problem. You just spent a considerable amount of time and much time in previous meetings on the PCB issue that the district's facing. And I went through the list of resolutions, and there's nothing being offered to the membership on a resolution asking the state to step up and fund the corrective actions necessary statewide. That's going to impact districts to the tune of millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps. So that would have been a resolution that I would have expected you folks to propose for the resolutions committee to consider bringing forth to the membership at your meeting at the end of the month or the end of October. It's disappointing that didn't happen, but it's too late now. I'm sure you've passed a deadline. So, but in the future, you ought to be at a meeting in plenty of time to propose resolutions. You ought to be thinking about what's happening statewide that's impacting this district that could be influenced by action by VSBA, and you want VSBA to do something about it with the legislature, you need to be proposing resolutions. My district would just normally pass in 2 or 3 or half a dozen resolutions every year like clockwork. And we studied all the resolutions that were going to be considered. And at a meeting with time to do it, we would decide on instructing our delegate what the position was going to be that the delegate would take on our behalf. You've just appointed Nancy to be your delegate, but you haven't told her that you feel very strongly about 3, 5, and 7, or whatever they happen to be. That's something you should be doing. You shouldn't be leaving it up to one person on your board to use their best judgment. I'm not suggesting that Nancy's not going to represent the board well, but it should be something that you do jointly at the board table. So just my thoughts for going forward.
Thanks, Kevin.
Go
ahead.
Thanks, Colin.
Yes, sorry, Colin. You haven't been around in a while. And welcome back. Yes, we will be discussing, Colin, we will be discussing each of these resolutions. But, pardon me?
At the 10-1 meeting?
Yes, at the next meeting. They've had these for a couple of days now, because we just got them from the VSBA. So I want them to have plenty of time to look at them and then have a list of questions or comments on each of the resolutions so that we can do a vote, and we will take a vote on so that I know how the board wants me to vote when we come into that position. But thank you for those comments. Didn't make that one pretty clear, did I? My apologies. Do we have any other things to talk about on the resolutions? How about the policy governance cohort? So this is, we are a policy governance board, and So there's a little bit more to being a policy governance board than just saying we're a policy governance board. It's done a little bit differently. And there is a policy governance cohort, which is a group of individuals who go through a learning process, and it's done by a person that is fully trained and certified to teach policy governance. Caty and I looked at it when it first came up to us, and we thought that it would be a really good thing for our board to do together as a group, as a training. And there will be 8 meetings, and they're going to be all online, so there's no traveling in the wintertime. It's going to the instructor will give us all of our materials, and copies of all the slides that she uses that night will be sent to each one of us after the meeting, and a lot of the pre-meeting material will also be sent to us, obviously, before the meeting so that we can have it and look at it. It won't be just our board. It will be a gathering of other board members from the state. And I don't know how many that is. Do you, Caty? I don't know how many that is. But it'll be a chance for us to talk with others and to hear how they are handling situations that may come up or may have already come up with us, and we've had to make some hard decisions and maybe could have made a better decision if we had had some experience, some more experience and some more training, specialized training for us. I think that I have heard this lady, you and I went to a meeting up in Winooski. Yeah. And she is really, really good. And I've got her name written down here somewhere. She is something like 30 years of being in the school boards and superintendents and instructors, and 17 years specifically working just with policy governance people. I think she's really, really good. I think it's going to be something that that our board will benefit from. Some of the key features are constructed curriculum. Participants, we will follow this course of the same course material, which often combines self-paced content with live discussions. We'll have peer interaction. When we're such a small board and we don't seem to have as much interaction with a lot of the other boards in the state. I mean, Caty and I do just because of what we do. Jacob does. And Aaron's starting to, aren't you?
Sure am.
Get a lot of them. But for us to be able to sit down and talk with other board members and how they're handling their situations there and how they're working with policy governance is really important. That peer interactions, it makes it nice if you can pick up the phone at night and say, hey, Colin, how things going over there on your side of the town? You know, we're having a problem with this. Have y'all had this kind of problem? What did you do about it? How did that work? Did it work? And then I've got this problem. Do you think you can help me a little bit on this one? And I think that sometimes we miss that. And I think it's really important that we have it. It'll be a key benefit and the opportunity to learn alongside the peers from other organizations. Builds professionalism, builds professional networks. Another one is expert guidance. The cohorts are typically led by experienced policy governance consultants who can facilitate discussions, answer questions, and provide feedback on real world situations. We've been trying really hard this year as our board to be as proactive as we could. And so some of that has been a little bit of a change for us and our board. And so having some hearing some stories of real world situations and how they handle them could be a real benefit for us. The learning process emphasizes the policy governance principles. Giving us practical and tangible outcomes. And I think the last thing I'd like to say about it, and then you can ask as many questions as we can answer, is that we want to align our entire leadership team on governance best practices. And to do that, we've got to be able to fully understand it. And trust me, I've been on this board for a number of years now, and I'm starting to feel better about it. But I've also learned a lot that I had not known before. And I would like for this board to be one of those boards that have all the information that we can give to them so they can make educated outcomes for our students. I think it's good, even though we're not going to be getting together personally, but we can at least be hearing each other online and talking to each other and hearing the concern that Cathy may have for something that I hadn't even thought about it being a concern. And then we could talk about it, and then we could talk about it with other people that have already been down that trail and came to a successful ending. So is that about as confusing as I can get it? And again, it's 8 different months. And it's always on a Thursday night. It's just the one night. Lasts for an hour. It's Zoom. You'll have materials beforehand. You'll have materials afterhand. And copies of all the slides and everything that she presents for the learning. Any questions?
If more than
Any
two,
answers?
if more than two of us attend, it's a quorum. That's my concern.
That is not a problem for this.
Okay.
Okay. She's got us covered.
Okay.
Anything else? Right?
Sign me up, as long as it's covered and I don't get in trouble.
Yes, yes. Policy work. The first reading, course offerings and class size by Jeremy Warren, please.
Yes, this will serve as the first reading of the class size policy, code D6. It is the policy of the Hartford Supervisory District to comply with Vermont law requiring school boards to develop guidelines for minimal and optimal average class sizes for regular and career technical education classes. Class size guidelines will be used to inform annual decisions related to staffing and program offerings. Administrative responsibilities. 1, the superintendent or designee shall, in consultation with building principals, develop class minimum, maximum, and optimum average class size guidelines that 1, take into account the instructional needs of specific elementary grade intervals in required and elective courses at the secondary level. 2, may vary as necessary to reflect differences among school districts due to geography and other factors such as school size and programmatic needs. 3, comply with state or federal requirements related to such matters as student-teacher ratios, special education, technical education, and English language learners. 2. That should be an A, B, C, but I'll work with it. The superintendent shall report to the board at least annually on the implementation of this policy and shall include in the report information related to the use of the guidelines and determining actual class sizes and program offerings in the schools within the school district. 3, in accordance with Act 153 of 2010, the superintendent shall ensure that this policy is posted on the supervisory district's website.
Thank you very much.
And now we will vote to approve the responsible computer network and internet usage policy that was first read and warned on September 3rd. I move to adopt the responsible computer network and internet usage policy as warned and read on September 3rd, 2025.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All against, say no. Okay, motion carries. Monitoring report GP4, agenda planning, and Cathy Lemire is going to take this.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
just for a quick point of order, in reference to the question that came up about the types of meetings in order for us to attend in that type, that came up again this week with a workshop that we will be attending around the consolidation of school districts. So what the advisement has been is that if we know that we're going to be meeting in mass, we can warn those as a workshop. And then that covers questions regarding open meeting law process.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Cathy, we're good.
Yeah, anything else? So this was our first attempt at a policy audit. I just want to say I actually really enjoyed this activity. It was kind of fun to dive into it. The template was very helpful, so thank you. So I was tasked with auditing the G4 or GP4 agenda planning policy, which the last time it was read and adopted was in 2008. And I don't see any revisions since then. I will just start with just reading this statement. It says to accomplish its job outcomes with a governance style consistent with board policies, the board will follow an annual agenda that A, completes a re-exploration of ENDS policies annually, and B, continually improves board performance through board education and enriched input and deliberation. I found by going through previous meeting minutes and agendas that we are mostly in compliance with most of the statements. There were a few. The first one with our statement, I did mark that as in partial compliance because I couldn't find any evidence that our ENDS policy has actually been reviewed since 2017. I know there was some work on the vision of a graduate, and I saw that survey was out, but then it was hard to find some follow-up monitoring or review of that. There is on our website a monitoring report on the ENDS policies, and that was completed in March 2017. So we're not doing that annually. But I think, where are my notes? Oh, that the ENDS policy. So I think if we can schedule a formal review of the ENDS policy before the end of our current cycle, which would be next August, that will put us in compliance. The next one. Was the consultations with selected groups in the ownership or other methods of gaining ownership input will be determined and arranged in the first quarter to be held during the balance of the year. And that one I found to be in substantial compliance. We do we had the community forum in May. The Vision of Graduate survey was sent out last November. But we currently don't have anything scheduled on the books for having that planning done in the first quarter, which I was assuming was September through November for the school year. I was like, are we thinking January through March? I don't know. The language was a little tricky for me. But if we could get some, and I think given what we're facing with PCBs, having some more community forum input on that, whether it is a community forum meeting or surveys, that would put us more in compliance. But to have those at least scheduled by November. And then the last one that I found to not be in compliance was the superintendent compensation will be decided after review of monitoring reports received in the last year during the month of December. And by going through, again, previous meeting minutes and agendas, I couldn't find evidence that that was actually taking place in December. And what did I write? So in the most recent cycle, the evaluation and compensation decision occurred in June following the hiring of our new superintendent, Caty, and a performance review. So while the evaluation was completed, this timing doesn't align with the December requirement, resulting in a partial noncompliance. And seeming as we just did it in June, I don't know that it would be necessary to do again in December. So I think, maybe we would want to consider a revision or clarify whether the policy's December timeline continues to be appropriate, or should it be updated to align with the superintendent contract cycles and evaluation schedules. Other than that, we were in good shape for that policy. Again, this was a fun activity.
Oh, now we know. Thank you. You did a really nice job. I appreciate that. Katie is going to do monitoring report EL1.
Thank you. So much like Cathy, I did my research in determining when the most recent monitoring of this executive limitation was. I actually couldn't find evidence of any report at all. Forgive me if I followed the guidance that we had in terms of past templates, and including the most essential aspects of a monitoring report, such as including the policy title, the statement related to the policy, my interpretation of it, the evidence of its existence, and my ultimate report of whether or not I am compliant. So the policy statement reads, this is Executive Limitation 1, Global Executive Constraint. Policy statement reads that the superintendent shall not cause or allow any practice, activity, decision, or organizational circumstance that is unlawful, unsafe, imprudent, or in violation of commonly accepted educational and professional ethics and practices. I interpret this to mean that the superintendent will follow with fidelity all related laws, statutes, contract language, and policies as they relate to the work of the district. Provided a list of evidence. It's not exhaustive, but some of the things that I listed here are that, our policies are available on the website. We have a work plan this year, which includes updating of all of our policies, both our ends policies and our mandated policies that are under the VSBA recommended and mandated policies, and also the board's monitoring reports of governance and of management and delegation. I also listed that we have created an organizational chart, which indicates, who supervises whom in the district, as well as who supervises whom in the district. And I also indicated that there is an evaluative process now that's known and understood to the board and the superintendent that follows the VSBA recommendation for evaluation, and that includes input by the board as well as our administration. And finally, it indicated, and again, not an exhaustive list, that I'm a member of the Vermont Superintendents Association. And that is my network in terms of direction in ethics and best practices. So I report compliance with EL1 Global Executive Constraint.
Thank you. Very nicely done. For, just for the public, we're looking like Caty couldn't find a report somewhere along the way that this had been done before, and when Cathy was looking for the past reports, we talked about this today, Caty and I did, and I said, I think what has happened is that I know that we did do monitoring reports, and I think that they just never got updated online on our subject matter, the subject matter of that. So I don't want the public to think that we're just sitting up here twiddling our thumbs, because we really aren't. And I had said I was going to look back in some of the older minutes to see if we couldn't find where some of these monitoring reports were more up to date than what we had thought they were. Yes,
Nancy,
yes, sir.
to your point, I'd just like to say that they are recorded in the minutes.
That's what I thought.
And after that point, I'll be honest, I'm not sure where they went. As far as
We aren't either.
as far as filing, but as far as the actual work, we did have a pretty exhaustive work plan. And if you look at work plans going back at least 6-7 years, you'll see that each board member had the same responsibilities that we are indulging ourselves in now. So, the formats, and what was interesting, the formats changed along the way as we started working with different cohorts, because we'd say, wow, they're using a better template. And so, and that's part of the evolution of policy governance, because technically, just for a quick history, we started this policy governance work in 2006, because this 2007, when I came on the board, was like our second year of policy governance. And it's been evolving continually ever since, and that's statewide. So just a piece of history.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. Now it's time for public comments. The board welcomes public comments. In order to accommodate as many community members' voices as possible, anyone making a comment will be given 2 minutes to speak. This is not a time for discussion, but the board is interested in hearing comments, concerns, and suggestions from the public. Sir, are there any public comments?
If I have 2 comments, do I get 4 minutes? The first comments can be pretty quick. They both can be, I guess. You've come to some intermediate resolution on PCBs this evening. And I just want to encourage the board not to lose sight of what's going on. You haven't resolved any issues. You haven't reduced the risk or the threat that exists in the high school building. You've simply figured out that it doesn't rise to the level of something you have to take action on right now. But our staff and students are still going to be learning in spaces that are contaminated by materials that you really don't know how to deal with. There just isn't enough science out there to be able to clearly state that there's no risk at all. So I hope it remains something that's on your agenda regularly for follow-up, that you're following up with the quarterly testing, and that you're determining what you're going to do over the long term so that at some point in the future, nobody is at risk simply because because we're meeting some arbitrary standard set by the state, whose primary objective is probably not to spend money. So the other thing, not unrelated, Jonathan has mentioned failing boilers a couple of times recently. I don't know if the boilers were to be addressed in the $21 million that was approved by the voters a year and a half ago. If they were, then get going. If they weren't, why not? But the larger question is, where'd that money go? Where is it? How much is left? Has it been spent on the projects that the voters were told it was going to be spent on? Has any of it been spent on projects other than what the voters were told it was for? I don't think there's been any reporting along the way on how that money is being spent, or even if it has been spent. I'd appreciate it if there's some regular reporting started to let us know what's happening with that money. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.
Um,
I'm calling. Next meeting, I will get it right every single time. Are there any other comments?
Well, I guess have a follow-up question. So we're going through this auditing process. What are our next steps for when we're not in compliance to get in compliance? Do we need to revise some of these policies, and what is the procedure for doing so? Policy.
This is new to me. So I would recommend putting a proposal at least for the superintendent review, to change the cycle of that, and we can discuss it during the next warned meeting, and then just adopt it. Because if it doesn't line up with the last, or at least with the superintendent contract, that makes sense to do it then.
Right. Okay. Right. So I guess my is what is our follow-through process?
Is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
update it, bring it to the board, we'll discuss it, and then we'll vote on it to change the scheduling.
Okay.
And then magically we're in compliance.
You know, not to get into discussion, of during public comment, but I can help with that a little bit after we get out of public comment, and I think I can do it briefly to help discern, because there are two different types of policies.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other comments? Okay. The consent agenda, do we have appointments, resignations, retirements?
Not at this time.
Woohoo. And
Nancy?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So being that we're out of public comment, to help Cathy and Jeremy with the question around the PG policies.
Right.
Those are more operational, because if you look at the evaluation that we do on each of those, we're talking about day-to-day operation around a very specific piece of work. So as we do the analysis, we're coming up with the questions that need to be addressed. And that's the actual updating of those policies, or because they're more procedural than just policy, if that helps.
Thanks, Kevin. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the 9/3/25 meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Our next board meeting is 10/1/25. Meeting evaluation. Who wants to do it today? Go ahead. Good.
Yeah, I was reading, I was
Jerry.
going back through GP4. Meeting date, September 17th, 2025. The board was prepared for the meeting, satisfactory. Board's time was spent on ends, not means, satisfactory. Each board member was given opportunity to participate, satisfactory. Board treated all persons with courtesy and fairness, satisfactory. Board adhered to Robert's Rules of Order, satisfactory. Board adhered to its adopted governance style. It emphasized outward vision. It encouraged diversity in viewpoints. It exercised strategic leadership, not administrative detail. It maintained distinction between board and staff roles. It used collective decision-making. It looked to the future, satisfactory.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Okay, you got it. No
So I
need
was-
for a second nor a vote. This meeting is adjourned.